In this video, I am going to show you how macros in Excel can be used in accounting modeling. First, let me show you a simple model which I have developed for an organization to manage their students. So I show this model to get an idea uh, as to how macros in Excel can be used in accounting modeling. Now this is the interface of the model. You can see this section can be used to make payments and get the printout, right? And then this section for the discount application, and this section shows the 12-month payment history of this selected student, and this section for the attendance counting. Okay, and when a new student comes to the organization, he or she should be registered. Then the user needs to go to this student register tab, and needs to enter the details of the student. Let's assume that the ID of the student is 2100, register say 2200. Now it colored in red. Now when I enter 2100, it colored in red. The reason is it is a duplicate entry. You can see the reference here. If it is in red color, it is a duplicate entry, meaning that already there is an entry in the name in the number of 2100. So if I use 2200, yes, it is not a duplicate entry. Let's assume that the registration date is today, that is 6th October 2020, and name of the student is say H M Amarasiri, and the address of the student is say number 500 Nugekoda, NIC say 987654321V, telephone number note 7722222222. Okay, so I have entered the details of the student. Then I need to update. So I can click this update button. Now once it is updated, you can see if I want to enter the same information, it is a duplicate entry because it appeared in the red color. Now once the student is registered for the organization, then that student should be registered for the course and the batch, right? So the user needs to go to the next step, that is course registration. Now there the student ID should be entered. Now it is 2200. Okay, and if it is a duplicate, it will again show in the red color, and if that student is not registered, say for example 2300, okay, we can't proceed because there is a validation, right? Now 2200 uh, is our student's registration number. Registration date, I mean the course registration date, let's assume that is also today, uh, 6th October 2020. You can see the name of the student, HM Amarasiri, right? Address is also appeared here, NIC and telephone number. Now this organization has courses. So I have created two courses, AB01 and AB02. So on I can create up to many courses. Okay, let's assume that this student Amarasiri is attached to the course number 1, AB1. Okay, and for a course there are batches. Now the next section is the batch. Now here also I have created two batches. AB1 batch 2020 September, AB2 batch 2020 September. So I can select AB1 batch. Okay, now once I fill this information, I can register the student to the course and batch. So I can click on this button. Okay, so now student was registered to the organization and also registered to the course and batch. Now assume that this student comes to pay the course fee, right? Now I have set the course fees and the users to the systems, all this information, so I don't show them. So I come to the payment tab. Now the student ID is now payment ID is automatically generated. User is I have created three users, Randi, Nipuna and Chamara. Basically they are the cashiers. Okay, then we can look at how much of collection is there for each user, and you can take, or we can take reports of the collection. So let's assume that this cashier or the user is Randi. Okay, date will be automatically generated. uh, it's 6th uh, October 2020. Okay, and the student ID should be entered here. It is 2200. Now once you enter the student ID, okay, this section will become a transparent section, meaning that you can proceed, right? Otherwise, due to the data validations and all, you will be restricted. Now the course that student has been registered is AB1, and the batch that the student has been registered is AB1 2020 September. Okay, you can see the student name Amarasiri, uh, NIC number and course fee. So I have set the course fee, therefore it is 5,000 and currently no discount. Now assume that you need to give 25% discount permanently to this student. So what you need to do, you can go to the down section, update discount permanently. There you need to enter the student ID 2200. Okay, course is AB1. Okay, batch is AB01 2020 September. Let's assume that we need to give 25% discount, right? Now you can update. Now look at, once you update the discount, it will come here, and after deducting the discount amount, net amount is 3750. Okay, 3750. Now this user or the cashier can make the payment, right? So once all this information is filled, right, the pay button can be clicked. Now when I click the pay button, the payment has been updated to the payment database, right? Thereby the new entry can be entered here, right? uh, Entered here. Now if I uh, select the same student for the payment, say 2200, it has been restricted. Why? Already for this month this student has paid, therefore I can't proceed. But if I come to the second month, that is November month, okay, November month 2200, it should be so you can see we can proceed. Okay, now once you select the next month, you can see 12 months payment history. Already this student has paid for June based on the earlier date, right, to 3750. Okay, for this month This student has not paid, that is why this is in red color. See, not paid, right? So likewise, once the pay checkbox is clicked, okay, let's assume this is 7th month. Should be like this, yes, 7th month. So I can click the page checkbox or the button. Then what will happen? Automatically the printout will be coming from the printer. Okay. Now if I select the next month, 8 2200, you can see two payments have been made. And similarly, the attendance can be marked. So the user can go to the attendance section, say this should be say June month. Then if I enter the student number and I can update, then attendance will be marked. Now if I want to look at the number of days attended, now in the payment section you can see attendance counting. Month is June, course is AB1, batch is AB1 2020 September, and ID of this particular student 2200. So number of days attended 1. Okay, to take decisions, this information is very important. And apart from that, there are a lot of things in this model. uh, I can go to the payments. Okay, payments. So this is my report where I have used a pivot table. So first I need to refresh the table so I can filter based on the date. If I want to uh, see the payment or the collection of a day, I can select the date. And from users, now this is Randi, right? Likewise, user wise, the collection can be taken. And then AB1 is the course. So course wise collection can be seen. This is AB01 2020 September is the batch. So batch wise collection can be seen. And 2200 is the student HM Amadasiri. Student wise collection can be seen. So likewise, using this pivot table, I can easily take the payment details. Right now, this is a total model. Right there, I have used macros especially and other Excel tools to develop this model. Right, so I showed this model to get an idea how Excel tools, especially macros, can be used to develop well effective accounting models. Right. Okay, having seen that simple model for student management, let's get into the theoretical part of macros in Excel. Now, first of all, we'll look at what is a macro. Now, macro is a simple program created by you in Excel to automate repetitive tasks. Now, in organizations, when you perform day-to-day activities, you may have frequently used repetitive tasks. To automate these tasks, you can use a macro. Actually, here I am going to use the macro recorder, not writing the codes to create macros. Okay, therefore in Excel there is a macro recorder where you can perform the steps once, then macro recorder will record your steps, and whenever you need to perform the same steps, you can run the macro. Okay, so you can see the description. It is a created program to automate frequently used tasks. To automate repetitive tasks, you can quickly record a macro in Microsoft Excel. When you record a macro, all steps that are needed to complete the action are recorded by the macro recorder. After you create a macro, you can assign it to an object such as a toolbar button or graphic, or you can assign a shortcut key so that you can run it by clicking the object or pressing the shortcut key. If you no longer need to use a macro, you can delete it. So let's see how to create a macro. Okay. Now if I come to uh, the Excel sheet, uh, first you need to go to developer tab, but by default the developer tab is not available in Excel. So in that case you can go to file, there are options, and under the customize ribbon you can see developer tab. So you need to tick the developer tab here, but the section where the developer tab is available is different from each version. Therefore, depending on the version of the Excel or the Office package, the developer tab enabling tool may be placed in different places. Okay, but anyway, that is there. So I can tick the developer tab and click OK. So developer tab comes into the Excel. Okay, now in the developer tab, in your left hand upper corner you see the macro section, and I told you that there are two ways to record a macro, I mean to create a macro. One is you can use the macro recorder. Now this is record macro recorder, and the other one is you can write the codings. For that actually Visual Basic can be used, but here I am not going to use the Visual Basic to write the codes, but instead I use the macro recorder. Okay, now if I click on this macro recorder, I can give a name to the macro. You have to give a meaningful name to the macro, like update or formatting or whatever, and then you can assign a shortcut key. Right, by pressing the shortcut key you can easily execute the macro. Right, and regarding the shortcut keys, I have mentioned here, when you use the shortcut keys, it is recommended not to use the standard shortcut keys. Like we all know that we are using standard shortcut keys. Like for saving purpose, we use Control plus S. To select all the area, we select or we use Control plus A. Right, to paste Control plus V. So on we are using the standard shortcut keys in Excel. Right, so it is recommended not to use the standard shortcut keys here. If you do so, what will happen? The macro shortcuts will be replaced by uh, or I would say like this, macro shortcuts will override the default shortcuts. So for example, if you use Control plus S as a shortcut to execute a macro, okay, whenever you press the shortcut Control plus S, it will execute the macro and it will not perform the saving operation. හරිද? ඒ නිසා මැක්‍රෝ එකට දෙන ෂෝට්කට් එක ඩිෆෝල්ට් ෂෝට්කට් එකක් නොවෙනවා නම් හොඳයි. ඩිෆෝල්ට් ෂෝට්කට් එකක් විච්ච ගමන් වෙන්නේ ඒ මැක්‍රෝ ෂෝට්කට් එක ඩිෆෝල්ට් ෂෝට්කට් එකව ඕවර්රයිඩ් කරනවා. එතකොට ඕනම අවස්ථාවක අපි ඒ මැක්‍රෝ ෂෝට්කට් එක එන්ටර් කරොත් එහෙම මැක්‍රෝ එක රන් වෙනවා. අර බේසික් ඔපරේෂන් එක සේවින් ඊළඟට කොපීන් පේස්ටින් වගේ එක perform වෙන්නේ නැහැ. It is recommended not to use standard shortcuts when you create macros. Then the next section is the scope. Where do you want to store this macro? Right? There are three areas here. First one is personal macro workbook. and the second one is new workbook. Third one is this workbook. Where do you want to save the macro? Now say for example, the macro that you will be creating uh, will be applicable only in the workbook that you are doing or that you are using. අපි හිතමු ඔයාලා ක්‍රියේට් කරන මැක්‍රෝ එක අදාළ වෙන්නේ ඔයාලා මේ හදන workbook එකට විතරයි. Okay? The macro will be used in the workbook that you are working with, not in other workbooks. In that case, the scope should be this workbook. Therefore, the macro will not be worked in other workbooks. Okay? Or else you can create the macro to a new workbook. Then the macro will be executed in that workbook only. Okay, that is not that important. And look at the first one. Now assume that you need to use the macro created here for all the workbooks, all the Excel workbooks, right? Even in future reference. So in that case, your scope should be personal macro workbook. Meaning, whenever you use a workbook, Excel workbook, if you use the shortcut key or the macro running object, you can execute the macro, right? ඒ කියන්නේ ඔයාලා macro එක තැනක create කරලා ඒක ඕනම workbook එකට apply වෙන්න ඉඩ දෙනවා නම් මේ first option එක select කරන්න ඕනේ personal macro workbook. එතකොට ඔයාලා මෙතන හදන macro එක ඕනම workbook එක වැඩ කරනවා. Right? So it is clear, I think, that if you want to confine the scope of the created macro into the current workbook, you can select this workbook. Right? If you want to apply the created macro to all Microsoft Excel workbooks, you can select personal macro workbook. Then it will be applied to all Excel workbooks, right? And lastly, when you create the macro, you can write a suitable description here. What is this task? Okay, what are the activities that we are performing? Okay, in which situation we can perform these activities or macro. Likewise, you can write the descriptions here, right? Then once you click OK, the macro recorder will start. Macro recorder will start. Okay, before I record a macro, I discuss how to create a macro, and with respect to the macro name, there are some guidelines. The first character of the macro name must be a letter. So you can't have a number or any other character as the starting digit of the macro name. It should be a letter. අකුරක් වෙන්න ඕනේ. The following characters can be letters, numbers, or underscores, or whatever the characters. Spaces are not allowed in the macro name. But if you want to separate words, you can use underscores. Words separate කරන්න ඕන නම් underscores use කරන්න පුළුවන්. Spaces use කරන්න බෑ. Right? If your macro name is also a cell reference, then අපි දන්නවා මෙතන හැම cell එකකටම නමක් තියෙනවා. Right? Now this is A1. Okay, this is B1. Likewise, each cell has a reference, has a name. Right? So if your macro name is also a cell reference, you may get an error message, meaning that you can't use default cell references as the macro name. Okay, so for example, you can't use a macro name as A1 because A1 is a cell reference, cell address. Okay, therefore default cell addresses cannot be used as macro names. And regarding the shortcut keys, I told you that shortcut keys can be any lowercase letters or uppercase letters, and keep in mind not to use the default shortcuts. If you do so, the macro shortcuts will override the default shortcuts. And when you store the macro, basically we have two options. If I summarize, first one is we can store the macro in this particular workbook, or we can store the macro in the personal macro workbook. Thereby, it will work for all Excel workbooks. And this is also very important. Now, when I press this OK button, the macro recorder will start. And what you need to do, you can perform all the activities. But before that, Lamai, I advise you to practice. Okay, you can practice the task several times, and if you are confident enough, then only you need to record. Right? So practice and practice and practice, and if you are confident enough, and if you are okay with the steps, then only you should record it. Otherwise, you will record unnecessary steps, erroneous steps that will lead an erroneous macro. එනිසා ළමයි macro එකක් run කරන්න කලින් ඒ perform කරන්න ඕන steps ටික හොඳට කරන්න, practice කරන්න. Practice makes perfect, right? uh, Therefore practice it and practice it, and therefore thereafter you can record the macro, right? And after you perform all the activities, remember to stop the macro. Okay, because this is a recorder, right? So if you keep recording without stopping, the macro will record all the steps that you are doing. Clear? Therefore, once you stop, or once you finish performing the steps or the actions, you need to stop the macro. Okay, that is also very important. And I told you, by default you don't see the developer tab in the menu bar, so you should get it from the Excel options, right? Okay, let's record a simple macro. So in this Excel sheet I have typed a number and the name. Number is 15255, name is Kumar. So I'm going to record a simple macro. Assume that I need to change the formatting of this name. Maybe the color, maybe the font size, font style, likewise formattings, right? So assume that this is a repetitive task. Again and again I want to do the same thing. Therefore, what I plan to do, I'm going to assign this task to macro, and macro will perform the task whenever I need to format. Okay, so what I do is I select this cell 15255. Okay, then I go to the record macro. First you need to go to developer and then record macro. Okay, and let's write the macro name as format1. So I will assign this macro to a shortcut. I told you not to use a default shortcut, so instead I use Control plus Shift plus Q. Usually this kind of shortcuts are not available in default. Therefore I use Control plus Shift plus Q. Remember the shortcut. And also I limit this macro to this workbook. Therefore scope is this workbook. Okay, description I can write font size, let's assume that 20, and font type Times New Roman, and it should be bold. Okay, likewise you can write a suitable description. Now once you click OK, macro recorder will start the recording. Therefore you have to be mindful about the steps that you are going to perform, right? So I click OK. Now once I click OK, you can see this record macro button changes to stop recording, meaning that the macro recorder is running. Okay, macro recorder is running. So I can perform my task. Assume that I need to change the font size, font style, and the bold type in this name. So what I do is I move to this name, okay, Kumar. So I moved to 3 cells from D4 to G4. Then I do the changes. So I go to Home tab and font size as we wanted is 20, and then the font style should be Times New Roman, and it should be bold. Okay, and even I will add another one, that is say highlighted. Okay, so I have done my actions. Now assume that these actions are done over again and again. I mean a repetitive task, right? Now remember to stop the macro recording, because still it is being recorded. So you can go back to the developer, you can see still it is being recorded. So if you are finished, you can stop recording. Okay. Now if you go to macros, now actually because of that previous model which I showed you, there are a lot of macros, but if you come to this workbook, you can see format 1. Okay, format 1. And from here also you can run the macro. You can select the macro and run. Okay, select the macro and run, but we assigned a shortcut by executing the by pressing the shortcut keys. We can easily execute the macro. Okay, now I will take the original situation. It was 11. It was basically Calibri and not highlighted and not bold, right? So I was in this cell. So if I run the macro, now remember my shortcut, control plus shift plus q, control plus shift plus q. See, it will automatically change. Shall I show it again? Now I will take the destination cell into the original situation, number 11, and it was Calibri and not bold and not highlighted. So I selected this cell. Okay, I execute the macro, and I told you that even from the run option you can execute the macro. Now this time I will use that method, developer macros. So I have selected the format 1. If I select run, it will execute. Okay, so there are basically 3 ways to execute a macro. I showed you, you can assign a shortcut key. By pressing the shortcut key you can execute the macro, or else you can go to macros, then you can select the relevant macro and run. Okay, and another interesting one is there. Okay, if I take this back to the original situation, it should be Calibri and not bold, not highlighted. The next one is very interesting one. Okay, I can assign the macro to an object. Okay, so let me insert any object. Yeah, insert shapes. Okay, to insert an object, I can go to insert, and then under illustrations I can use a shape. Say this is my shape. So I can edit text, say update or format. Right. Now once you draw the object, basically it is a shape. Okay. Now you need to assign the macro. So how to assign the macro? You can right click on the object. May object එක මත right click කරන්න. Okay, like this. Now if you get this window, you can see assign macro. Assign macro. So select the assign macro option. Then you will see all the created macros. There you can select your macro, that is format 1, and click OK. Okay. Now you can click somewhere else. Okay. Now I selected this cell 15255 because I need to select that cell first. Then I need to execute the macro. Now I told you there are 3 ways to execute the macro. Number 1 is you can go to developer and go to macros and select the macro, then run. Number 2 is we assigned a shortcut key. By pressing the shortcut key, you can execute the macro. Number 3 is now we created an object and assigned the macro to the object. Therefore, you can just click on this object, it will execute. That is very interesting. Therefore, when it comes to the execution of the macro, it is recommended to use the shortcut keys and the buttons or the objects, right? Because it is very difficult to go to the macro windows and select the macro and run, right? So it is usually recommended to use the shortcut keys or objects like these buttons. Then it will be very easy to execute, right? Let me take you to another important thing. So I will take the original situation. Again, it is Calibri and not highlighted. Now if I select this one, assume that you have another field like 16400. Name of that person is say Janitha. Okay, not bold. Now if I select this cell, assume that you need to do the same formatting here. If I select this cell, okay, and if I execute the macro, what will happen? If I select this cell, now this is the second record, 16400, the name of the person is Janitha. I need to perform the same operations like formattings. Okay, changing font size, font style, likewise. So I select this 16400 and execute the macro. What will happen? Let's see. You can see it will execute the previous one, not the current one. But we wanted to format the current record, but it went to the earlier destination. So what has happened? What is the wrong? Okay. Now if I make it into the original situation again, not bold, not highlighted. So I go to the developer tab, right? In the macros, I'm going to delete the macro, right? So keep in mind you can delete macros So it is very simple. Go to developer and macros, and you see the created macros. You select the macro and delete. Okay, so I delete the macro and you can confirm. Right now it is no longer be there. Therefore, if I execute this, doesn't work because there is no macro. Okay, now I am going to create the same macro again with a change. What is that change? So I select the cell that is 15255, right? And you can see this small option, use relative references. Okay, you can read this description. Once you place your cursor, label appears. You can read the label. Use relative references so that macros are recorded with actions relative to the initial selected cell. ඒ කියන්නේ දැන් මම මෙතන සිලෙක්ට් කරලා මැක්‍රෝ එක රන් කරාම එයා cells තුනක් right hand side එකට ගිහිලා formatting කරා. Right? The macro went to 3 cells right hand side and did the formatting. Now when I selected the second row, second record, right? What I wanted to do, the macro should go to 3 cells from here and format the respective cell. But instead what happened, it went to the original destination. Right? To make it relative to the selection, you need to select this, use relative references. Okay, so let's try it. So I select the original cell and also I select use relative references. Now I have selected use relative references. Again I am going to record the macro. I use the same name, format 1, because earlier one was deleted. I don't assign a shortcut key. Instead I'm going to assign that to this format button. Okay, the scope is this workbook. I don't write the description clear. Click OK. Now I can perform the actions or steps because it is been recorded. So I can come 3 cells right and I can do the formatting. So I can go to home. So I change the font size as 20, font style as Times New Roman, and bold, and highlighted. So that's what I wanted to do. And remember to stop the macro, I told you. So go back to developer, stop recording. Right? So your steps have been recorded by the macro recorder. So as I did not assign a shortcut, I can assign this macro to this button. So I can right click on the button and then assign macro, format 1, select it, click OK, and click somewhere. Right? So I will make it into the original situation. It was 11. It was Calibri and not highlighted, not bold. Right? Now if I select this and execute the macro, what will happen? It will go to the destination cell and do the formatting. Assume that now you are in the second record, that is 16400. Okay, 16400. So if I perform the same macro, what will happen? Earlier you can remember it went to the original destination and change the formatting accordingly. Now let's see what will happen. So I selected the new record and click formatting. Now it works. එනිසා use relative reference කියන එක වැදගත් ගොඩක් තැන්වලදී මොඩල් එක ක්‍රියේට් කරනකොට. මම හිතනවා මේක clear කියලා. You can read the label given under relative references, then understand more, right? So I have discussed how to assign a macro to an object or graphic. And also I have explained how to run or execute the macro, right? Basically there are three ways. Using the developer tab and macro window, you can select the macro and run. Then the second method is you can create a shortcut key. Then by pressing the shortcut key, you can execute the macro. And third one is one of the interesting ones. You can draw an object like a button. Then by right clicking the button, you can assign the macro. And later when you press the button, the macro will be executed. And also I told you deleting a macro, right? You need to go to the developer tab and select the macros, like developer tab, select the macros, and you can select the created macros in a list, select the macro and delete it. Okay, likewise you can delete the macro. And when it comes to the editing a macro, basically you need to edit the macro in Visual Basic. Okay, Visual Basic. So I am not that familiar with the Visual Basic. I mean that I am not an expert in Visual Basic. So I do small alterations in Visual Basic. Otherwise what I do is, frankly speaking, if I want to change a macro to a great extent, what I do is I delete the macro and recreate it. මම Visual Basic සම්බන්ධයෙන් එච්චර එක්ස්පර්ට් කෙනෙක් නෙමෙයි. පොඩි පොඩි alterations කරගන්න පුළුවන්. හැබැයි ලොකු alteration එකක් ආවොත් එimhe what I do is මම ඒ macro එක ආයෙ delete කරලා ආය create කරනවා. ඒක තමයි මම කරන්නේ. හරිද? මොකද මම Visual Basic සම්බන්ධයෙන් එච්චරම familiar නැති නිසා. Okay? So let's edit our macro. So what I can do is I can go to developer and go to macros window. So this is my macro, and you can see edit button, edit, click there. Then you will be directed to Visual Basic. Now this is Microsoft Visual Basic for applications. Okay, now you see your actions were recorded, but behind the screen the codings were generated. ඉතින් මෙහෙම කෝඩින්ග්ස් ලියලත් අපිට මැක්‍රෝ එකක් රෙකෝඩ් කරන්න පුළුවන්. හැබැයි මම නම් එච්චර ෆැමිලියර් නැහැ ඒක. මම එක්ස්පර්ට් කෙනෙක් නෙමෙයි. එතකොට මට කෝඩින්ග්ස් එච්චර ෆැමිලියර් නැති නිසා මම ඒ ක්‍රමය ගත්තේ නැහැ. If you are confident and good enough with the codings, you can directly come to the Visual Basic and write codings to record the macro. Okay, now simple alteration can be made. Now say for example font size, earlier it was 20, but assume that it should be 14. So I can select it, size 14, and here also size 14. ඒ වගේ පුංචි alteration එකක් මෙතන කරගන්න පුළුවන්. ඒක automatically save වෙනවා, නැත්නම් මෙතන save කරන්න පුළුවන්. Okay, no need to save. You can minimize or close it. Let's see whether that change has been applied. So I take the original situation. It is 11 and it was Calibri and not highlighted, not bold. So I select the original cell and press the format. Now see, it is 14, not 20. So likewise we can edit the macro using the Visual Basic to a lesser extent, but if you are not good at the codings, you are not advised to do big alterations. ඒ කියන්නේ ලොකු alterations කරන්න advice කරන්නේ නැහැ. මොකද step එකක් හරි වැරදුනොත් එහෙනම් macro එක වැඩ කරන්නේ නැහැ. But At the same time, you can do simple alterations. පොඩි පොඩි වෙනස්කම් කරගන්න පුළුවන්. Okay. That is regarding the editing a macro. Then number 7 topic, copy a macro module to another workbook. Copy macro workbook to another workbook. To do this, you need to open the two workbooks. Now what we are going to do, we have a macro created in one workbook. We want to copy that macro to another workbook. එක workbook එක හදලා තියෙන macro එක එහෙමම තවත් workbook එකට copy කරගන්න ඕනේ without recreating it. So you need to open two workbooks, right? Open the workbook that contains the module and the workbook that you want to copy the module. So if I go to this workbook that we were working with, so I can go to developer. Okay, developer, under the code section okay, you can go to Visual Basic, and also as I showed you my model, this model, it has many macros. Okay, it has many macros. So I have two workbooks opened. One is this model and the other one is our practicing Excel sheet or Excel workbook. So I open the Visual Basic, developer and Visual Basic, and you can see under modules, okay, under modules there are two workbooks opened. Now if you can't see this section initially, I mean by default, you can go to view in the Visual Basic and then project explorer. Okay, view in the Visual Basic, then project explorer, then you will see this section. Now here you can see two workbooks. One is book 1 is our workbook that we are working with, and the other one is my model, fee management model. Okay, now fee management model has several sheets, sheet number 1 to 12, and also you see the modules. Now modules are the macro modules. මේකේ modules තියෙනවා 8ක්. ඒ කියන්නේ macros ගොඩාක් තියෙනවා මගේ ඉස්සෙල්ලා model එකේ. ඒතර මට ඕන නම් මේ macro එකක් අරගෙන මගේ workbook එකට, දැන් අපි ඉන්න workbook එකට දාගන්න. ඔයාලට පේනවා උඩින් this is my workbook, book number 1. Okay, under that modules, only one module, because we created a simple macro, right? So if I want to copy a macro from my original model, what I need to do, I can say, for example, I want to copy the module 1 of my accounting model, which I showed you earlier, to the new workbook. So I can drag and drop to the new module. Now you can see in my workbook, right, module number 11 has been copied from the previous model. Likewise, if you have macros in one workbook and if you think that it will be suitable to the new workbook as it is without changing, okay, you can just copy. Okay, but I advise you to use this method with caution, because the previously created macro may not be 100% suitable or perfect to the new workbook, right? If it is 100% perfect, you can copy, otherwise you can recreate the macro. Only thing is ළමයි සමහර macros තියෙනවා steps ගණනාවක් තියෙනවා 100 200 තියෙනවා. එතකොට ආයෙක recreate කරන එක time consuming සහ even you might forget the steps, right? In that case you can copy, but you have to be caution that the outcome or the output should be same, right? So likewise you can copy macros. Now if I come back to my book 1 workbook, now earlier there was only one macro which was created by me. Now I copied another macro to this workbook from the earlier workbook. So if I go to macros, okay, if I go to macros, and if I save this workbook, you will see uh, you will see the copied macro module as well. දැන් මම මේක save කරපු නැති නිසා තාම ඒක ඇවිල්ලා නැහැ. save කරොත් එහෙම ඒ copy කරපු macro එකක් මෙතෙන්ට එනවා. හරි. Likewise you can copy a macro from another workbook to this workbook, but basically it is done in the Visual Basic. The next topic is saving macro enabled workbooks. That is also very important. Now usually you save the Excel sheets, but if you save this Excel sheet with the normal setting, right, normal setting එකක් යටතේ මේක save කරොත් එහෙම it will be saved but without macros. So if you save this Excel workbook with the normal setting, the file will be saved but without macros. Therefore, if you want to save this with the macros, what you need to do, you can go to File and Save As. Okay, I will select this for one folder. Say my file name is test1, and the important thing here is you need to select this second option, Excel macro enabled workbook. By default it is Excel workbook. If you save in this format, it will save the file or the workbook but without macros. But if you want to keep the macros in the workbook, you need to save in this format, Excel macro enabled workbook. Click there and you can save. Okay. The next thing is when you select your created macro, and if you go to step information, you can see the codings step by step. So macros format 1 step information. Wait for a while. Basically it will direct to the codings. Okay, basically step information can be seen in Visual Basic in this format, right? And the next one is now when I created this simple macro, I enabled use relative references, right? I enabled this use relative references, meaning that the macro that you create in this worksheet will be working in any sheet, right? Usually macro created in one worksheet will work in other sheets as well. So for example, if I come to sheet number 2, say the number is 17500, name is say Tarindu. Now I am in a separate sheet number 2. Usually macro will work in other sheets as well, right? So if I select the cell, and here I don't have the button, so I can go to macros, and this is my macro. If I run it, there is an error because of the changes that I have done, so it will work usually, right? It will work. You can test it, experiment it, and the macro that you create here will work in other worksheets as well. So I can delete it and quickly create another one. Yeah. So I make it into the original situation 11 Calibri, no highlighted, no bold, same as this. Okay, I select this and go to developer. I make the use relative references on and record the macro. Say format 1 because I deleted the earlier one. I will also assign a shortcut key Control plus Shift plus Q. The scope is this workbook. Click OK. So I come to the destination cell, go to home, and the font size I change as 20. Font style Times New Roman. It should be highlighted and bold. That's all. So I can come back to developer tab, stop recording. Okay, and I can assign that macro to this object or the button. Right click, assign macro, select it, click OK, click somewhere. Okay, so if I come here and if I execute the macro, it will work. What I was telling you, it will work in other worksheet as well, right? So I come to worksheet number 2, where I have created the same record with different number. So if I execute the macro, now here I don't have the button, instead I can use the shortcut key. It was Control plus Shift plus Q. It will execute, right? Therefore, macro created in one worksheet will work in other worksheets as well. Keep in mind. So with that, we can finish the theoretical part, and we have two class activities. Number one is, suppose you want to update monthly salary details of employees to a database. The monthly salary sheet is in the following format. You get this data monthly. You need to update into a database in Excel. Write a macro to automate the about task. Every month or every week you need to do the same operation, so it is going to be a repetitive operation. So what we are going to do is we are going to automate these repetitive operations using the macro. Then it will be very easier to execute it. Okay, so I have taken this information to the Excel sheet, that is sheet number 4. So basically assume that we get this information: employee ID, employee name, net salary, date of the payment. Okay, assume that you are using an accounting software or ERP software. Using that software we get a report like this. You know that easily we can export reports to the Excel, right? So in the sheet number 5, I create the database headings. So basically database headings are this. So I copy this here. Okay, so these are the database headings. So what we need to do, we get information like this. employee ID, name, net salary, date of the payment, right? So I need to record a macro. Now, before we record the macro, I ask you to practice and practice and practice, right? Otherwise, the macro will have errors. So manually, I can do some steps. Then, if you are okay, then we can record the steps. So what I'm going to do, I get this data. So I select this data. Okay, I copy this data range, then go to the database and then select the first cell, then insert copied cells, shift cells down. The selected cells will be coming down. Click OK. එතකොට ඒක copy වෙනවා. අපි හිතමු දැන් අලුත් record එකක් එනවා. අපි හිතමු employee number 120, name of the employee is Nimal and salary is 15,000, same date of the payment. Okay, so if I do the manual operation again, I copy this range. Okay, copy this range, come to the database, select the first cell, right click, insert copied cells, shift cells down. ඒකද select වෙලා තියෙන ටික පහළට එන්න ඕනේ. click OK. ඒතර latest එක හැම වෙලේම උඩ තියෙනවා. We'll do another one. The next employee number is 140. He is say Kumar. Salary is 16,000. Same date of payment. So I copy the area or the range and come to the database. Select the first cell. Right click. Insert copied cells. Shift cells down. It will work. Okay, now again we need to come back to the original one. We can even erase this one. So likewise, once we get familiarized with these steps accurately, then only we can record. Otherwise the macro will have errors. Okay, so let's record a macro to automate this simple task. Again, this is a simple operation lamai, but you can see the big picture, right? Right, so we'll record the macro. Assume that we get a new record, that is 150. Name of the employee is Ravi. Net salary is say 12,000. Date of the payment same. Right, now I will ask the macro to select the range. Macro එකට මම කියනවා range එක select කරගන්න කියලා. එහෙනම් අපි record macro යන්, we go to the record macro. Let's name the macro as salary updation. Remember that you can't use spaces to separate words. Instead you can use underscores, right? I don't assign a shortcut key and store this macro in this workbook, and I don't write the description as well. You can write a description, suitable description as needed. So once I click OK, it will start the recording. Okay, so you have to be ready for the recording before you create the macro. Click OK. So what I do is I select the range. That means the macro recorder will select the range. Then I copy. Okay, I pressed Ctrl+C, otherwise you can right click and press copy. Then I come to the database and select the first cell, right click, insert copied cells, insert copied cells. Okay, shift cells down. ඒ කියන්නේ select වෙලා තියෙන එක පහළට එන්න ඕනේ. Click OK. Okay. Now keep in mind the recorder is being still recorded, right? So I come to the data sheet, I mean input sheet, sheet number 4, and assume that I want to erase this. Once it is taken, I want to erase this. So I select the range, delete it. Okay, and I select the first cell. That's all about my steps, so I can stop the recording. Okay, now what we have done, we have recorded the usual manual steps into a macro recorder. Now macro recorder has recorded all these steps, and whenever we get a new record, it will do the needful, right? So I will insert a button here, insert illustrations, shapes. Let's use this button. I will add text as well, say update. Let me change the font size. Okay, so I can assign that macro to this object or the button. I can right click and assign macro. This time we have two macros, so I have to assign salary updation macro. Select it, click OK. You can click somewhere. Now assume that we get another employee's detail. Now it is say 165 employee number. Name of the employee is Sandun. Net salary is 22,500. Date of the payment is, I can't remember the earlier date, but anyway, date of the payment is say 6th October 2020. Okay, that's all. So assume that this data will be coming from the ERP system or accounting system. So we have basically this data, but we need to store this data in a database. Okay, so what I can do is I have recorded all these steps in the macro, and I have assigned that macro to this update button, so I can click. Very simple, right? What has happened? Okay, we get an error. The reason is I did one mistake, that is when I record the macro, I kept the use relative references as it is, right? Now in this case, always we have to select this range. Okay, not based on our selection. අපේ selection එක අනුව නෙමේ selection, ඒ කියන්නේ අපේ selection එක අනුව නෙමේ cell reference එක තෝරන්න ඕනේ. Always we have to select this one. ඒ කියන්නේ ඉස්සල්ලා sheet number 1 ගත්තොත් always we have to select this one, not relative to the our selection. Okay, so in this case we have to remove this use relative references, otherwise it will create a wrong macro. දැන් ඉස්සල් එකේ මෙතන අපිට ඕන වුණා මෙතන select කරපුවාම ඒකට අදාළ relative reference එක format වෙන්න. එහෙනම් ඊළඟ record එක ආවට පස්සේ ඊට අදාළ relative reference එක format වෙන්න ඕන වුණා. හැබැයි දැන් මෙතන salary sheet එකේ හැම වෙලේම අපි select කරන්න ඕන මෙන්න මේ ටික. එතකොට ඒක relative නෙමෙයි. අපි ඉන්න තැන ඉඳලා relative නෙමෙයි. හැම වෙලේම always we have to select this range. Therefore my mistake was I should not use relative references. So what I do is I will again record the macro, but we have to delete the earlier one. So I delete salary updation, how developer macros, select the salary updation, delete it, and click the confirmation message. Yes. So I am going to record the macro again without this use relative references. Okay, this is bit of technical and you need to plan, right? Use relative references. එක මම අයින් කරනවා. Okay, we'll record straight away. I go to developer and record macro. I can use salary underscore updation. I don't assign a shortcut key. The scope is this workbook, correct? Click OK. So I will ask macro to select the range but without relative references, right? So I select the range. Now macro is being recorded and copy it. Come to the database. I select the first cell in the database, that is in my case B3. Right click, insert copied cells, and shift cells down. Click OK, right? And come back to the data sheet, I mean input sheet, sheet number 4. I will erase this record and I will come to the first employee ID cell. That's all. And remember to stop recording. So I stop the recording. Then I will assign the edited macro in this for this update button. Right click, assign macro, salary updation, click OK. Assume that we get another employee's detail, that is 170 employee number, name say Pumi, net salary is 17,800, date of the payment is 6th October 2020. Okay, දැන් මම කොහේ හිටියත් අර relative reference එක අයින් කරපු නිසා එයා තෝරන්නේ මේ ටික. Right, let's see. So I can click on the update button. It will be updated very quickly. So if I come back to the database and see, it has been updated. Okay, and I will come to another record, say 180, name of the employee is say Bandara, net salary 27,400, date of the payment 6 October 2010. So we get, I mean assume this data is taken from the ERP or accounting software. Okay, so what we can do is we can quickly or we can easily press the update button. Okay, that has been updated. So likewise we can easily automate repetitive tasks in macros. So you should remember or you should think about the big picture, and this is very simple example, and when you deal with very comprehensive, very complicated and lengthy example, you need to practice the steps first and then you can record the macro, right? Okay, let's get into a bit of a complicated or comprehensive activity. You can refer the activity number 2. First, read the activity and understand carefully. Chamara company sells their goods in 3 districts, namely Colombo, Kandy and Kurunegala. Okay, the current month sales of each district are analyzed with 2 previous months sales to get the variances. Current month එකේ sale එක මාස දෙකක previous මාස දෙකක sale එකත් එක්ක analyze කරනවා. Okay, and get the variances. විචලතාවය හඳුනා ගන්නවා. The current month sales should be added to the previous accumulated balance when the new monthly sales values are available. අලුත් මාසයක් ආවට පස්සේ current month එකේ sales ටික accumulated balance එකට add වෙන්න ඕනේ. Current month sales should be added to the previous accumulated balance when the new monthly sales values are available. In each month, this series of activities have to be carried out at the company. So it is a repetitive activity, isn't it? Following is the analyzed sales variances for the previous month, March 2020. Let's try to understand this. Now, this is current month, that is March 2020. So they have sales figures for each district: Colombo, Kandy, and Kurunegala. This is current month, right? So they have taken current year accumulated balance, again Samuchita Vichigana, up to February, previous months. Okay, 63,000, 81,000, and 45,500 accumulated balance. And also this is current month, March 2020, and they have taken sales values of previous 2 months, February 2020 and January 2020. Okay, February and January, and up to February accumulated balance is also given, right? And they need to look at the or calculate the variances. Now variances with January and February, meaning current month sales 63,500 minus January sales 55,000. එතන මේ variance එක කියන්නේ current month එක අඩු කිරීම January. ඊළඟට මෙතන current month එක අඩු කිරීම February. හරි, ඒ වගේ variances දෙකක් ගණනය කරන්න ඕන. Now they have given the new data. Assume that this is the analysis. Now this is the analysis that you need to do again and again, right? So it is going to be a repetitive task, and you get this information only, right? You get from each district the sales of the month. So we have been given April and May 2 months data, right? Now let's assume that we have April month's data. So how to analyze that data using this format? So April months come to the current month. Now once the new month come, it comes here, current month එකට එන්න ඕනේ. එතකොට when you get the April month's data, March goes to the past. Therefore these totals should be added to the accumulated balance, current year accumulated balance. And March month should go to the February, February should go to the January, and April figures should come here. And after you take the April month's figure, you can analyze the variance April with March, April with February. Okay, so we will copy this data to an Excel sheet like this. So I have copied the data, and I will do one analysis using the manual steps. Then later on we can ask the macro recorder to record the steps, and this is going to be a little bit difficult one, because you need to perform quite a lot of steps or activities in logical manner, right? So assume that this is up to March. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to record these steps manually. I ask you to practice the steps again and again before we come to the macro recording. So this is up to March. So I have the new data for April, so I will do the manual calculations and operations. So what I do is please look at these steps carefully. Otherwise, if you missed one step, that will be the end of the macro, right? So I get the April month's data. So what I do is I have to plan now. As time is passing, I will do this quickly. Now this month should go to the January, March month should come to the February, okay, and March month should be added to the previous accumulated balance. and then for the current month we should get the new data, that is data for April, these data, and then we can analyze the variance. So I will do, first I will cut the previous month and copy to the the cells that the January data were available, and this month go to the, I copy it after the February, okay, and these totals should be added to the previous accumulated balance. So I think that you have learned paste special command, so I am going to use that command. And keep in mind, when you record the macro llama, you need to incorporate all other all other Excel tools. Okay, macro is just a recorder, but you need to remember all other formulas and tools in Excel. So I am going to use the paste special. So what I do is I select this area and copy, right, and again I select the previous accumulated balance, and right click, go to paste special. There I need to add the March month's details to the previous accumulated data. So the operation should be add. Click OK. Now it has been added. And the name should be copied to the previous one. I mean accumulated balance up to March now. Now I can take the current month figure, that is 2020 April. I can copy and paste it here. Okay. Now I am going to calculate the variance of current month with two previous months. Some two previous months when on them, February and March. So I copy these two labels. It should be February and March. Okay. So I can calculate the variance how, equal current month is now April minus with February. So February sales was 63,000. Current month sales minus February sales. Press enter, you can track. Similarly, current month sales with the March, that is equal current month sales minus March sales. Press enter, you can track. Okay, now assume that, just look at how many steps were performed. So these steps have to be performed over again and again, right? So it will be a time-consuming task, and even we might do mistakes. So we can ask macro recorder to record these steps, and whenever we get the new data, say May data, right? May මාසේ data આવුත් එහෙම ටක් ගාලා අපිට මේක execute කරගන්න පුළුවන් වෙනවා. Okay, as I have done one series of operations manually, I can go to the recorder, the macro recorder, and record. So for that I take the May data. So assume that we have May data. Okay, I don't use the use relative references because this is an analysis that we do in the same location. It should not change based on the selection. Therefore, I don't use relative references. Okay, so I can go to record macro. Let's type the name as sales. I don't use a shortcut key. Later we can assign this to a object. Scope is this workbook. I don't write any description. Okay, so click OK. Then keep in mind your macro recorder will start. Right. So we get a new data, May. What I do is I copy this one, cut it, and paste it to the February. And April month's copy it. Okay, this should be copied and paste it to the previous month. You can copy it, you can paste it by pressing Ctrl plus V, right? And then current month sales, this 50,000, earlier current month was April, this total should be added to the previous accumulated balance. So what I do is I select this range, copy, I come to this previous accumulated balance, select it, right click, paste special, operation should be add, click OK. Then label should be up to April to 2020. Then accumulated balance එක තියෙන්නේ April දක්වා. Now I can take the current month sales, that is May 2020. So I take the total and copy it here, paste it here. We can copy, then we can paste. Then I can do the variance analysis. So I need previous 2 months. I take the labels from here, labels copy කරගන්න, paste කරගන්න. ඒතර labels දෙක ආවා. දැන් අපිට අර variance එක ගන්න පුළුවන්. So equal current month equal current month sales, that is 60,000, minus March month sales. Press enter, then you can track. And similarly you need to calculate the variance with the current month with the previous process month. That is equal current month is 61,000 in this district, minus previous month is April. Press enter, then track. That's all. So we have performed all these steps in a logical manner. So you need to remember, you need to stop the recording. So I stop the recording. Right? So as we have recorded it, I will insert and go to illustrations and shapes. Again I will use same button. I will edit the text, say update. Let me change the font size to 25, center, right. Then I can right click on the object, assign macro, sales, click OK, click somewhere. Now assume that we get the data of next month, that is June. Okay, Colombo sales is say 65,000. Assume that this data is taken from the system. Candy sales is 79,000. Kurunegala sales is 38,000. So we have this new information, right? So we have recorded the steps, so we can easily click on this update button. See, even you can't think of the change, but it has been changed. See, April month එක ඉස්සරහට ගිහිල්ලා, May month එක ඊට පස්සේ ඇවිල්ලා, current month එක June, it is 65,000, 79,000, 38,000. ඒ current month එකේ තිබුණ එක accumulate එකට එකතු වෙලා variances දෙක ගණන වෙලා තියෙනවා. හිතා ගන්න බැරි තරම් වේගයකින් ඒක වෙනවා. If I take another month, say July, Now it is 101, say 99,000, here 45,000, here 78,000 next month. So it is very simple. I can click on this update button. See, likewise, Lamai, the macro is very interesting tool in Excel, which I value it very well in developing accounting models, right? So I think that you got an idea about the macro, and you might not be an expert like this because Lamai, it needs some experiences and practice, but you know the meaning of macro and you can leisurely practice it. And whenever you have a problem, basically the repetitive task, you should think about incorporating the macro to the workbook, right? So with that, I will finish the lesson today and hope that you got something out of this lesson. Okay, thank you.